Hey everyone, Jim Moratis here from Village Local. Thanks for joining us on another episode of the CarePath Conversations. In this session, I managed to catch up with a very valued member of the Village Local Community Hub who goes by the name of Sam. And Sam is an absolute wealth of knowledge when it comes to getting the most out of her home care package. Now, knowing your entitlements when it comes to home care services and the aged care system can really make or break the aged care experience that you have. And Sam has it down pat. She's a wealth of knowledge. She's got a lot of experience when it comes to navigating the way through the aged care system. And in this conversation, we cover a whole heap of topics. Some of the things that I sort of made a quick notes on. What stops people from changing providers if they're not happy with the level of service that they're experiencing? What to do if your requests are getting knocked back by either your provider or an assessor or a RAS assessor when it comes to those support services that you need in particular. How to use your own carer and have that carer come with you if you've chosen to move on to a different provider, but you've really enjoyed the experience that your carer is giving you. Knowing your consumer rights and to know what you can ask for and what is not going to be possible under the home care package system. We also dive deep into a topic which isn't really spoken about, and that's the idea of care recipient guilt, or feelings of not being worthy of receiving support services or asking for that level of support that you need. So we dive into that topic as well and discuss that and get Sam's insights into how she thinks about that as well. Before we get into that conversation, if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you hit the subscribe button, which is a button just below the video. That will make sure that future CarePath conversation videos that we release, you're not going to miss out on, you'll be notified of. Also, if you're finding value in these conversations, make sure you hit the like button as well, because that'll really signal to the world that the information that we're putting out here is worth listening to and is valuable to help people access the support that they need and maintain the level of independence that they desire as well. So without any delay, hope you enjoy the conversation. Introducing Sam. You are a wealth of knowledge.
It just means that I have a lot of time on my hands, and I have done a lot of experience with research, and I like to get the most out of it, keep on top of it.
I'm blown away, and I wish your outlook, your approach, I wish that was the approach that everybody took, because there are far too many people that are resting on the advice and guidance of others making decisions for them, and sometimes those decisions aren't in their best interests.
Look, I spoke to my first provider, who was absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
And as I said to you, I got 6. Later on, I got 6 statements from a provider which were for other people.
For other people.
And they all had a house clean.
Mm-hmm.
One of them had physiotherapy, one of them had lawn mowing, and one of them only had a 1 hour morning and night. So I assume they were very sick or very old and had to have dinner or medication.
Yep.
And that's all they had out of 6 of them. And I thought, I bet it's just because they do not know what is available. And when I spoke to my first provider, he said, what happens? Because he was astounded, all the things I was asking for and getting them.
Mm-hmm.
But he said that what happens in a lot of cases, a member of the family rings up, particularly a son or daughter, who are busy running their own family and going to work. And they say, what can you do for our parents, or mum or dad? And the provider says, oh, look, we'll come in and clean the house. We can come in and shower them every day. And the daughter or son just says, fantastic, I'll leave it up to you, just do it. And that they just want to wipe their hands but think it's someone's doing it for them. And they walk away and they don't look into what is available. So, people just don't know. No one knocks on the door and tells them. So they're unaware. And then you've got the older people who, again, no one's told them what's available. They're very confused because the My Aged Care's website, well, it's absolutely horrific. It's not simple. Not everyone's got a computer. So it's an absolute maze for them. And then they get it all upside down. They don't know what they're doing. They're getting different packages mixed up, and it's a nightmare. What I'm doing at the moment, I'm in the process of writing up a list of all the things I have received over 5 years. If I walked you through my house from one end to the other, from room to room, and just pointed at the things that had been provided, even though you're in the position you're in, I bet you'd be falling over backwards, astounded.
I've come across people that have been knocked back on the most simple things that they desperately need.
There's two things there.
Yeah.
One is when people ask for something to be approved, there's what my OT calls magic words. When he first met me, he said to me, "Do you know the magic words?" And I said, "Yeah, this and this." And he added one more. And what you've got to do, everything you ask for, you don't just say, "Could I have X, please?" You've got to know how to word it so it fits in with the guidelines. And you can... Now, I had just carpet protectors. I wanted to go under a wheelchair and an office chair. So they would roll easily over the carpet and not damage my new carpet.
Yep.
And the provider said, no, you can't get that. I thought, like hell. So I went back and asked it to go to somebody higher for review. And even that lady said, no, you can't have that. But she was very good. She turned around and said, but if we word it this way, I can get it for you.
And what was the difference in the way that you were wording it and the way that you were advised to word it?
I'd have to look up the way. I think I just put down exactly what it was for, was to make the things glide a bit easier.
Right.
And to protect my new carpet. She said, well, they're not worried about your new carpet.
Yep.
And if the chair rolls over it, and the wheelchair obviously will, that's all you need. You've got the things working. But she said, if I was to say that the weight of the wheelchair is going to put holes in the carpet and form a tripping hazard, we can't have a tripping hazard in the house, can we? So she worded it that it was a tripping hazard, and I got them.
And you know what? Like, when I think about that, okay, some people listening to that might say, "Oh, well, you've gamed the system," and I don't see that. What I see is a lot of the people that I speak to, in particular, they are thinking about the end result. Like when you're saying, "I want to protect the carpet," right? You're communicating.
I was having trouble moving the chair away from the desk.
Okay, so
you had the weight on the chair, gripping the carpet.
Right, so you're having trouble moving the chair away from the desk because it's gripping the carpet, and you're probably also thinking about the way that I'm moving that chair, it's damaging that carpet, and you're probably also thinking about the damage that I'm causing the carpet. That's going to create more problems down the track, X, Y, and Z problems. You're thinking about all these things.
Yeah, but I'm not wording it.
You're not communicating it. Exactly. It's in your head. You're thinking about it, but you haven't articulated it. You were lucky enough to come across somebody, a professional that knew the language.
I said to her, why didn't the case manager?
Yeah, good question. Yep.
Come up with this, and she said, she doesn't know as much as I do. And I said, well, why is she in that position? She doesn't have the knowledge, and why hasn't the company trained her? But I had a few problems. Just about everything I asked for got knocked back. But when it went to the review board, within the company, everything got passed. So what I did, I worked out, because I learned that there was this magic to the wording and the reasons that you had to sort of give to work within the system. As soon as I want an item, and I don't care whether it costs 10 cents or 1,000. Whatever it is, before I ask for it, I sit down and make a few notes, and I scratch them out, rewrite until I think it sounds perfect. Then I ask for the item using the words that I have decided make it fit the bill.
Yep.
What would you say if I said to you, I received a $13,500 pergola?
I'd say that would be a very, very unique situation.
This thing was, it's all insulated.
Yep.
It's got $500, I've forgotten the price, might have been $300 something, of smart lighting in it.
Yep.
It's not small. I've had the house roof painted.
Mm-hmm.
I've had pavers put down. I've had trees lopped, big trees, smart technology, a side fence. They're the sort of they're the unusual things.
So a lot of those things that you've mentioned there, when people ask for them, they get asked for every day of the week across the country, right?
Yep.
The blanket statement by an untrained professional, potentially sitting in the case manager position of an organisation, is a blanket no, right?
Yep.
They just say no straight up, and it's really the onus on the consumer, the person asking or the
Yep.
person receiving, to advocate for themselves and to communicate.
I agree totally. I've got friends who just
Yeah.
say they accept.
They accept what they've been told.
No.
So let's go. Let's give the community now, the thousands of people across the village local community, and those that aren't part of the village local community, which this interview will be shared with. Let's give them a real case study. So let's step them through. Let's go back to the pergola, because that's a common one that gets asked for and gets knocked back straight away. So how did you go about your preparation before you even made the request?
As soon as I need something, my first thing is, how can I make this fit the guidelines? I've read the Act. I've read all their manuals.
Yep.
Basically, everything I buy, I think, is that something that I may be able to get from the package. If there's if it's a flat no, I know there's no way, I buy it myself. But if I think there's a slight possibility I can get it from them, I put in a request to get it approved. But before I do the request, I sit down and think, right, what's the item? What are the problems that I have without it? So why do I need it? How is it going to correct the problem I've got? How is it going to help me? And the few things you've got to do, you've got to make it be for a medical purpose, a safety purpose, or a security purpose.
Okay. Take a pause there. Let's go back now 10 seconds. You say to yourself, what is the item? Right, that was the first question you asked yourself. So I hope everybody listening into this is writing these questions down. First of all, what is the item?
The first thing that comes to my mind is the item, but obviously before that is, what is the problem I'm trying to fix?
Okay.
So what item would fix it?
Okay, so what is the daily lifestyle problem you are having?
Yep.
That is the first question. The second question that then leads into is, what is the solution to that problem? And that could be either a product or a service. Okay, either one. So in your case of the pergola, it was a product. So let's get real about it. So the problem that you were having that led to the pergola, what was the problem that you wrote down or
I've got
articulated?
multiple sclerosis,
Right.
and I'm very sensitive to temperatures.
Got it.
Now, if we look at the heat temperature, it meant I couldn't go out and get fresh air and sit in my backyard in summer because it would cause multiple sclerosis relapses.
Got it.
So to get fresh air and not be housebound, I needed a covering. Now, most coverings would not be suitable because all they do is trap the hot air. So what I did was go for a pergola that sat about, it was raised up about 8 inches above the roof tiles.
Uh-huh.
So when the air came through, instead of hitting the wall, it would continue through that gap between the two roofs of the pergola and the house.
And flow through.
Yep. And I got it approved, got it OT recommendation, got it approved, not a problem.
So
But it took I put in about a 2-page report saying what the problem was, what it meant that with COVID, instead of having guests to the house, which I hadn't done for 3 years, it's going to be beneficial to be able to have them outside in the fresh air.
Mm-hmm.
But even when I'm alone, it was meant I could get outside and get fresh air to prevent MS relapses.
In your report and preparation that you wrote, did you talk a little bit about or highlight if you did not have this product or request approved, what the impact of that would be?
Oh, definitely. That goes into the very first thing. What is the problem? I haven't been outside for a long time. Why not? It creates medical problems for me. Mm-hmm. Can I solve it? Yes, I can. If I had an insulated pergola, I could have it. And with the COVID situation, I could socialise, stop loneliness sooner than if I didn't have it. But that's only a temporary thing, that COVID. I had to emphasise more me every day for the rest of my life. The thing is, a lot of people would think that's not something they could ask for.
Yeah.
Or they would look at it not knowing how they can meet the guidelines with it.
Yeah.
They just say, I'd like a pergola. Well, no, that's not one of our...
What would you say to those people out there that feel an element of guilt or not feeling worthy? The common sentence I hear is, I'm not deserving. There are other people that need it more than me, so I'll just let them.
Look, I didn't feel guilt for that reason. Mm-hmm. I suppose a little bit. But I guess I was used to being independent and working all my life and not having things given to me, gifts from family, of course, but was very independent and not needing help. And when all this came along, I just felt guilty that all of a sudden I was getting these things, and there was just a feeling of horrible guilt. But I had a situation one day where a friend's sister's mother-in-law was in her 90s. She was on, I don't know whether it was a package or a CHSP. She was getting 2 showers a week, and her daughter-in-law wanted to get her an extra shower. When she rang up the provider, they said, oh no, we don't have enough staff to do that. And I thought, this woman's 92 and she can't get a shower. So I actually rang up my aged care and said, look, I've been approved for a level 4. I haven't got it yet. I'm on an interim package of a level 2, I think it was at the time, or a 3. I said, look, when my package becomes available, can I please give it to this 92-year-old and I'll swap places in the queue with her. I said, she needs help more than I do. The answer from my aged care is, no, you can't do that. The queue is the queue, and that's the way it is. I said, but this woman desperately needs help more than I do. Doesn't matter, can't be done. Now, I hopped off the phone just about in tears, thinking this poor woman. And then I thought, why am I feeling guilty when I'm trying to do my best? I will take less and give to a needy person within the system, and they won't allow it. And from that day on, I thought, blow it. Everything I've got really has helped me. I look down to it, I got a $39 tin opener. That means as much to me as the pergola. That $39 tin opener has made my life so much easier.
Yep. You know, the situation where people feel guilt, you did what you could to, really put yourself out, give up your place for your friend, and
For a woman, I didn't know, but I mean, if a 92-year-old can't get a third shower a week, something's wrong.
But what you realise through that process is the system, the aged care system, is built in such a way that really is structured to support people who request it, but also those people who request it to prioritise them. Okay?
Yep.
Now, the reason why I draw that out is because if your friend was in the system, had made the request, then that ticks one of the boxes where the government will say, all right, they've made the request, the system will sort that out. But both scenarios, both boxes need to be checked. The person needs to make...
That was possibly also her daughter-in-law not being aware, because when the provider said, oh, we don't have the staff, I wrote back saying, well, you change providers.
Yep.
But this was a friend's sister's mother-in-law, so by the time the emails went through the channels from one person to the other, the daughter-in-law had booked the mother-in-law into a nursing home, and she died 6 weeks later.
Right.
But the daughter wasn't aware of the system enough to know if this facility couldn't provide what she needed to get another provider.
What stops people from changing providers?
Two things, I think. One is the fear of the unknown, that it might be jumping out of the frying pan into the fire. And the other big thing is, when you change, you are aware that there's that 70-day wait for your funds to be transferred.
Yep.
Now, if you know that there were a couple of things that you were about to get approved, you think, oh, I can't change. How can I go 70 days without being able to access my funds? So you've really got to plan it and work out that you make the change at a time when anything you need can wait for 70 days. And it might mean that you want to change today, but you've got to wait a few more weeks to get some items that you've been saving for, because you don't want to wait another 70 days without them.
Mm-hmm. The other one I common hear is better the devil you know. In other words, the next one's just going to be just as bad.
Well, that's why that list I gave you,
yep.
If you follow that, particularly where you say, well, I need this and this item, because that's another thing. Your current provider might have an OT report, and there might be, say, 6 things on it that you need, and that provider may have approved all those things and you haven't got them yet, but you might be annoyed with getting a different cleaner every week, or getting cleaners that don't do the job to your satisfaction, whatever, or their transport doesn't turn up when they should. But you think, well, I've got all these hassles, I want to change, but I have approval for these items. If I change providers, the next provider might knock me back on those items. Mm-hmm. So that's why I put in that question where I ask the provider, I need this, and this, will you approve it? Sometimes the question is not, I need this. Sometimes it is, if I did need this, and I'll pick something left field to test them.
Yep.
And depending on how they answer that, might make my decision where I go. But if I need things definitely, and 3 providers say, oh no, we wouldn't give you that, and the 4th one says, oh yeah, we'll give you that. If it's something I really need and something that is a lot of money I can't afford to put out of my own pocket, I will go to that provider, because I know if they let me down on other things as services, I can always change. But I'm probably better off than a lot because I have my own carer. So I know basically all my services are going to be okay. So it's maybe a bit easier for me because he follows me from one provider to the next.
So that's quite interesting. Let's explore that a little bit further. So you said that you've got your own carer. You've switched to a few different providers. First of all, how many providers have you switched through? How many times have you switched providers?
Rightio. I started off on a CHSP.
Yep.
When I went from a CHSP to a package, the lady in charge came out to talk to me. And if I asked her a question, she'd say, I'll leave that to later. I've got to get through what I've got to get through. And she was reading it out of a book.
Right.
Or a folder. And she just read it off like a parrot. And I thought, oh, maybe you're new to this. And it turned out she was new to it. But when I rang the company and asked for her, the fellow said, oh, she doesn't work here. You've got the wrong place. I said, no, she definitely, this is a title. No, I don't know of anyone by that name.
Mm.
And I thought, well, that's a red flag. So I can't get to my case manager. There's no use me going there.
And paying for case management when you can't get to your case manager.
Yeah, so that wiped them out. And
Okay.
so I had to start looking elsewhere. And what I suggest and what I did, when I got approved for a package, but I knew it was going to be some time before I got it, I drew up that spreadsheet and I might have had about 20 providers on it. And I thought, well, I've got plenty of time. I'll just ring one a week. That's all I did. And I got that shortlist down because a lot of them just had taped messages, things like that, and I thought, get rid of them. I got it down to about 4.
Yep, right.
Then I did nothing until I got a package allocated. So I rang those 4, and all of a sudden they were dismal.
Mm.
And I thought, oh, where do I go now? So I had to start again.
Right.
Anyhow, eventually got the one I wanted, and I was with them for maybe 3 years, and they were local. They were only down the street, but had a manageress and a case manager, and they were, and even the reception, and the nurse, they were worth their weight in gold. They gave me allocated a carer. I could see straight away, before I even met them, why they had allocated them. They had actually matched me very well. The manageress and the case manager were always available to talk to. I was amazed. And then what happened, there was a restructuring of the company, which was Australia-wide, and they were bringing in a new manageress. And then from then on, the old manager, my case manager, and almost all the staff went to a newly formed branch of another company.
Right.
So I followed them.
Wow.
And I got a different carer all the time until my old carer transferred to them. And I said, I believe he's going to you next week. Put me down for his permanently. Now that went okay initially because they let me have my old case manager, but he actually was going to concentrate on NDIS.
Mm-hmm.
And after a while I said, look, we really only want him to do NDIS. We don't want to split systems. You really belong to a different case manager because you're all on an HCP. That case manager was useless. Not because what I didn't even get. She was lacking knowledge. Anyway, I had a broken pipe and all the water came up through the hole in the floor in the bathroom, went all down the hall and into some bedrooms. Well, it was grey water, or, filthy water. I thought, well, I'm going to slip here because I had falls problems with MS. I thought it's dangerous, I'm going to slip. 2, it's a health hazard. So I got onto them and said, look, I need a plumber straight away. Oh, we don't cover that. I said, it's a health hazard and it's a safety hazard because I could fall out, slip over. And I thought, well, if that's not a health and safety hazard, I don't know what is. So I rang up, got out my little list, rang up a few providers. They said, yeah, we'll fix that up for you. So I changed providers. So that was provider number 3.
So the catalyst for going from provider number 2 to provider number 3 was provider number 2...
Plumbing. They wouldn't do the plumbing.
Well, I'm going to scratch the surface a little bit further than that. They would not appreciate the challenges that you were having in life, the daily challenge. And the plumbing was just the catalyst of it, right? But they didn't they didn't truly understand, the challenges that you were having. Yeah.
I guess not applying the guidelines as they could be because other providers could do it.
Well, they were using the guidelines to protect their daily operations. They weren't working the guidelines to provide you with a fantastic experience.
Or with something that the rule said I could have help with.
Yep.
So I got, straight away, I got out of there, got the plumber in, got it all fixed. It was all done. It was terrific. I stayed with them for about a year, and then we came up with a hassle. They approved for... when I say they weren't good. They were good with approvals, but you could never, ever get the case manager. What happened, it didn't matter what time of day you rang, you get a recording saying you may have run out of hours. I think it's midday. and I'd ring it about 3 times. I'd get the same recording. I'd leave a message for the case manager on a mobile. She never rang back. I'd leave one for her assistant. She was good once she got up. Sometimes I had to ring head office in another state.
Oh, right.
They would ring my case manager, who would ring me immediately. But that was 5 phone calls to get to that stage.
Wow.
But
Not good enough.
That was constant. But I put up with it because I was getting my needs met in approvals. And I had my own carer. Anyway, I wanted a big tree lot because the roots was raising up all my pavers that I could trip over. And they said they'd do it. But then we got a problem. Because of COVID, the tree loppers have all had their injections, and the main thing was they had to have police checks.
Mm-hmm.
The 4 men doing it were all from Europe, and the police checks were going to take forever.
Right.
And I thought, well, while I'm waiting for them to get their police checks done, if I trip over, I could kill myself. I could literally hit my head and die or break a hip and not come through it. And I thought, I'm not prepared to put my life on the line for that if I don't have to. Anyway, I rang up another provider. They said, yep, we'll do that. And this was the week before Christmas. And they arranged it that I'd start my package on the 4th of January the trees could be lopped on the 4th of January. So I changed providers because to me it was my life on the line. Changed providers, 4th of January, 7:30, 4 men turned up, took out the tree. So then I was with that company for about 6 months, but they were the ones where the case manager knew nothing.
Yeah, right.
And every little thing I asked for would get knocked back, and I'd go to the review board and it would get passed.
Got it.
And between those two stages, I had to put in a big report, putting my case forward, and I was getting pretty sick of doing that for everything. So a girlfriend, she was trying out a new provider and she was quite happy. So I rang him up and had a talk to him, liked what I heard. That's where I am now.
If you're getting a good experience from your current provider and you've been through a long journey, what stands out?
Yes, it's good. At the moment, I've just had a recent problem.
Uh-huh.
Some work I wanted outside, and it was approved. Not a problem. And all of a sudden, it became unapproved.
Right.
And the reason was that once he approved it, he wrote to the tradesman to confirm that him and his employee were up to date with their COVID injections.
Okay.
And the manager was, but the employee wasn't. So my provider said, sorry, I know it was approved, but you can't use that company because they're not up to date with their injections. You're going to have to find someone else.
Okay.
So I thought, well, that doesn't add up. I better check a few rules out. So I checked out a few rules and found that the current ruling had to be in tandem with the state guidelines at the time.
Yep.
Now, the state guidelines, there was nothing to say that the tradesmen had to be up to date with their injections.
Mm-hmm.
So I wrote back to him and let him know. And guess what? He rang up and said, oh yeah, that rule's been lifted now. I wasn't rude enough to say, well, it was lifted before.
We started this conversation.
Exactly. I just said, oh, good, so I can book it in now. He said yes.
But again, that's another example where the reason for success is because you took it upon yourself to advocate. You're the minority, right? The majority of people receive.
My girlfriend said if the provider says no, because he said no to her for some things and said yes to me for the same thing. And I said, that is purely because you accepted no. Why did you accept it when you knew it was wrong? She said, I was brought up by my mother. If my mother said jump, I had to jump. If my school teacher said I had to do something, I had to do it. I said, fair enough. I said, they were the person in your life responsible to care for you and make decisions on your behalf because you were a child. I said, you're now an adult. It is up to you to make your own decisions. So it is up to you if you want to correct a situation. She said, oh, I'm not like that. I just accept what I'm told. So I guess she's one of many out there.
Well, that's interesting.
Particularly the older people, they haven't got the fight in them.
I have got a different spin on that, right? I totally appreciate what you're saying. There's a generational thing here. You're in your 70s or 80s, I would assume.
I'm in the 70s.
You're in the 70s?
51. Or 69 plus 2, Jim.
Or 69 plus 2, right? So you're in the late 60s.
Plus a couple.
Right? So you're actually one of the younger ones in the aged care system.
Yeah, that's the problem. I'm still young enough to be able to cope with it.
Well, here's where I'm going with it.
It would be very stressful.
Here's where I'm going with it, right? The average age for a home care package recipient is actually 83. Okay?
Is it really?
Yeah, it's actually a bit older for women than it is men. For women, it's 83. For men, it's 82. Right, so that's last time I checked the stats.
That's interesting.
That's the average age for a home care package recipient. Now you're 69 plus 2, right? So leave it to others to do the math. And I myself, at the time of this recording, am 39. Right, so we've got 3 different generations here that we're talking about now.
You're going to be an expert.
The 80-year-olds that I speak to, a lot of them are very accepting. Not all, but the majority of people that I speak to are very accepting of what an authority figure or a perceived authority figure tells them. Okay,
Yeah,
so if
generation.
it's a generational thing.
Yeah.
Of that generation, it was an industrialized generation. It was very hierarchical. Where
See, I grew up when the 60s was, everything was breaking through.
it was breaking free, it was liberation. Where so the 80-year-olds, they were taught when we say jump, you say how high.
Yeah.
Right? Your generation comes through in the 60s that says, hang on a second, is this the right way? You question it, right? You still respected authority, but
My girlfriend says, I don't want to fight with them because she's older than me. And I say, look, I don't fight with them. I simply put forward what I think is a reasonable case, but in a polite
and respectful way. So you've got respect for authority, but you work with authority to come to us. My generation coming through, us, 40-year-olds, 35-year-olds, whatever it is.
You're going to run the show.
Well, we've got a different mindset again. So we acknowledge that authority exists, but we've got a different mindset. We see authority. We're the boss of the authority. So the authority answers to us, right?
Yeah, you're more activist and rebellious.
Well, I wouldn't say it's rebellious. It's like, so for example, right? A police person.
But you don't accept things just on face value if
You don't.
you don't agree with it.
It's like if I tell a silly story. When I was a 3-year-old, right? A 4-year-old, and I was being a bit of a rascal, my mum would say, Jim, if you don't smarten up, I'm going to call the police. And I would freak out. Now, I'm sure people listening to this are saying, oh, where were docs involved in that sort of parenting? I assure you my mum's a very loving person. She brought me up very, very well. But she would say, Jim, I'm going to call the police. And I would smarten up, right? So my mum's headspace was the police people, they are authority and you need to respect that. Now, my generation, I would never say that to my child because the way I think about police is police are there to serve, and I use the word serve, to serve us. We've got a different relationship with authority. A politician, a prime minister. My generation sees a prime minister as the PM works for us. We tell the PM what we want and we expect the PM to go and do that, to go and make it happen. Right.
Well, that gets back to probably was my turning point. When I said I used to feel guilty until they wouldn't let me help out an elderly lady.
Mm-hmm.
That was probably my turning point. Rather than feeling guilty for accepting help, I started like you. That is there to serve me.
Yes. Yep. So you've reached that mindset. The system is here to serve me, and the people that uphold the system, they are working for me. I'm not working for them.
Yeah, but very, as you say, harder again for the 80-year-old.
It is. It is because it's a cultural and a mindset shift, right?
Yeah.
And of that generation, we're dealing with people that truly know hardship. The people, the 80-year-olds, the 83-year-olds and 82-year-olds, the average home care package recipient, they know hardship. They've been through world wars. They've been through depressions. They've been through migration. They've been through hunger. They've been through, persecution, prosecution. Like they've experienced so much hardship. So the
I
idea
think
of
they're lucky, even if they don't accept the help, they're lucky.
they're yeah, exactly. They're one of the lucky ones. So the idea of the arthritis setting in, making it a little bit trickier to get in and out of the lounge, or making it a bit
manage.
they'll say, she'll be right.
Yeah.
There are others that are doing it tougher than me. Yeah, they are.
Well, she'll be right. That was one of my father's pet sayings, and he'd been to the war.
Yep. Yep.
Very interesting.
It's fascinating, right? And a lot of it, there was somebody in the community group. It might have been Trevor in the community group. One of our very, another.
Trevor Marr.
Yeah, very, very knowledgeable bloke. Trevor, shout out to you, mate. Thank you for your contribution in the community group. But he mentioned something a couple of weeks ago, or it might have been last week, where he said the squeaky wheel gets the oil. And I thought to myself, that is, if I reflect on all those who are getting the best aged care experience from those that are getting a crappy one, it's the ones that have been able, not so much to be the squeaky wheel, but to clearly articulate what
There's a problem there, though.
Yeah.
To be able to articulate it or to get the squeaky wheel going, you have to have the knowledge to know what is available. And the government, all the providers in the government will tell you is you can get things like, they've got a list, something like personal care, house cleaning, washing, ironing, shopping, transport. If you look at that list and read it word for word, you don't understand or realise that they're all services.
Mm-hmm.
You don't realise what you can get in items,
in
other
products
than
and
medical
items.
aids.
Yeah.
They don't tell you about that.
I 100% agree. I over the years I've been sort of helping people navigate the aged care system. It's been a few years now. I started back in 2017. But
what got you into it?
hold that question. I'll share that story. All right, I will share. The over the years that I've been doing it, I've shifted my approach. My initial approach was really around creating awareness on what's possible, right? You can get this, you can get that, you can get this. I was really, communicating that, and then I've realized by shifting my approach and helping people articulate what their challenges are, and then helping people voice their challenges, I've found that once somebody voices their challenge, somebody around them will say, "Hey, if you've got that challenge, that's the path you take. You go down that path to solve it, right?" And that has been proven to be a much more powerful exercise. If we take that back to what you've done, let's go back to the Begola, right? You've said, "I've got a challenge. I'm living with MS, multiple sclerosis, and because I've got that challenge, I am unable to enjoy the benefits of being outdoors, and particularly, enjoy the outdoor area of my home."
Yeah, get some fresh air.
Get some fresh air. So you've been able to identify this challenge. And then you went on to ask yourself the next logical question: how do I solve that challenge? Okay. Now you didn't know how to solve that challenge. Maybe you did, but your logical mind led you to the next question, which is, how do I solve that challenge? What are my options? Now, you may know the answer to that, but the majority of people wouldn't know the answer. So a majority.
Well, even if they came up with the answer, I think too many would just say, "Oh, because of the expense, there's no way they'll cover that."
Well, this is where I'm going with it.
Embarrassed to ask for it.
This is where I'm going with it, right? And for those listening in, please pay close attention and really pick apart what I'm about to say. If you can articulate your problem, the next logical question you should be asking yourself is, what are my options to solve that problem? And you can start your own list of what your ideal options are. Forget the policy. Forget what the aged care system looks like. Forget what they can tell you can and can't have, right? Because the reality is, in this country, those who know how to work the system can live the best life that they can live. Okay, there is a way to do that. You just need to know how to navigate it. And the way that you navigate is you connect with somebody who can help you navigate it, right?
Yep.
So come up with your own list of, independently of what policy says, what you think, you yourself, what you think would solve that problem. Then once you've done that, then start talking to people who are in the industry, professionals in the industry, to say, hey, I've got this problem. I think it'll be solved by this. What do you think? How do you think I can achieve this? Do you know of a government program that can solve this? Do you know of anything that can help this? And get their insight and their input. They're the people that lead to success. And if you reflect on your situation, 2 days ago, or might have been yesterday, you sent me 36 questions. That spreadsheet that you sent me had 36 questions on there.
That was just
Off the top of your head, right? 36 questions that you've used to interview the 3 or 4 providers that you've joined on along your journey. Those questions, I guarantee, when you were speaking to your first provider back in CHSP days, you did not have those 36 questions, right?
Oh yes, I did.
You did? You managed. Well, how did you have that insight then?
Well, as I said, I do a lot of research.
Okay, so
I read the Act for starters.
Right, so you read...
Because I'm computer literate, I've got a computer. I've also got a background in librarianship. Yep. I've also got a background of helping kids from kindergarten to university in research.
But what...
It's something I enjoy, so I had... everything I possibly could about.
Okay, so what you're explaining there is you managed to acquire knowledge from industry experts in the books that you read, the research that you did.
I also had a couple people in from providers, like when I rang them up, they said, could we come and talk to you?
Yep.
Now, one sat there and said, our exit fee is $250. The next one said, our exit fee is $1,000.
Mm-hmm.
So I quickly learned there was a vast variation between them.
Yep.
And sometimes it was a matter of something they said that would make me put that question on the list for the next person.
Right. So you can see here, you've been on this journey. You identified that you had a problem, but then you started putting the antlers out. You started doing research. You started communicating.
You learn as you go.
Yeah, you learn it as you go.
I had a list of about 30 questions, I can assure you, on day one.
Yep. But on day 0, you did some research. You were researching what's the Act. The Act was written by an industry professional, right, or a group of industry professionals, and you acquired the knowledge from those industry professionals to arm yourself with those questions so that you knew what you could ask for. You knew what the options were.
Yeah, look, I'd read things like the My Aged Care back the front. I'd read all the COTA websites, the LASHA websites.
Yep.
All sorts of things. My latest is I've got onto your website.
Mm-hmm.
But that's all part of just trying to get knowledge.
You asked the question a little while ago, how did I end up in this space?
Yeah.
How does a 39-year-old, or I was 34, 35-year-old...
What, for your parents to need? Or?
No. So my background is actually, I went to university and studied biomedical engineering.
Interesting. Right.
Yeah, so my background's in biomedical engineering. And I spent the majority of my career. So I graduated from the University of New South Wales as a biomedical engineer, started working in the medical device space in Australia, and I spent a good 17 years in the medical device industry in Australia, working in things like cardiac ultrasound, radiology, pacemakers, implantable devices, all that sort of stuff. So that's kind of like what I cut my teeth on in my career, my corporate career anyway. And towards the later years of that career, I found myself working in a lot of population health projects. So what I mean by that is, a hospital would get together with a medical technology company and they'd start coming up with a project to say, hey, look, in our local community, there's a large burden of this particular disease. There's a lot of people in our local community that aren't getting the treatment that they need. How do we, as a hospital and a medical device company, maybe even a private health insurer, how do we get together to rally our resources and solve that problem so that more people could access healthcare and stuff like that. So my job in that was to coordinate all that, to understand what the problem was, to bring doctors together with technologists and all that. And so that's what I was doing in my career, right? And then back in 2017, this serendipitous moment happened for me where I was, 35 at the time, might have been 34 at the time. I was finishing off, I'd gone back to uni at that stage to do a master's in business administration or an MBA. So I was really, really busy finishing that off. I had a 1-year-old child. I was flying in and out of the country a lot, doing, the work that I was doing. My wife was beginning to forget what I looked like because I was just so busy, right? And it certainly was not experiencing work-life balance. And then this serendipitous moment where my neighbour across the road from me, her name's Lillian, she was 87 at the time. She flagged me over and she said, "Oh, Jim," this is when I pulled up from work, she said, "Oh, Jim, can you help me replace the garden hose?" And it was one of those garden hose end bits that was in a vacuum sealed container, really hard to open up, right? And her knuckles riddled with arthritis. So I did that, and I had my 5 minutes of pleasantries with Lillian in typical busy mode, Jim busy mode, run, rush. I said, "Okay, Lillian, see you later," and I ducked inside. And then about a week and a half, 2 weeks later, my wife, who was a social worker at the time at the Kids Hospital in Westmead.
Oh, what a good combination.
Some might think so. But my wife pulled up and it was raining on the day and she saw Lillian out of the corner of her eye. Lillian was laying down between her front door and her front gate, so still in her front yard, so not on the street, between her front door and her front gate. Lillian had slipped over. She'd fallen over. She was laying on her side. She broke her hip. And she was lying in the rain, and she might have been there for hours calling out for help, and nobody was around.
Oh.
Yeah, and cut a long story short, that was the catalyst for Lillian ending up in a nursing home. She did a stint at RPA hospital and a little bit of rehab, but Lillian never came home again. She went to a nursing home that was outside of the community that she'd been in that home for 40 years. She was an instrumental member of the community. In her later years, she became quite isolated and lived alone, and
all because of one trip.
And one trip. Now, a couple of things happened for me there, right? First of all, I felt immense guilt. Okay, because it was only a week and a half, 2 weeks prior that I was with Lillian. I saw her, right? I saw how frail she was. She called me in a moment of need, and I solved the acute problem, but I certainly didn't even scratch the surface of what was going on underneath. I didn't even ask in my 5 minutes of rush. I did not even ask, "Lillian, is there anything else I can do while I'm here?" I didn't even do that. I was in my own head. I've got to get inside, right? And that is, I mean, once I got over the guilt, I realized, you know what? This is not an issue. This is not a problem of Jim. This is a problem of Jim's society, my society, right? We are all so busy in living our lives and rush. And, I even through, like, personally just working through that, I was reflecting with my mum, okay? And I said, my mum was born in a little village in Sicily, in Italy. And I said to my mum, how do all the oldies stay safe in the villages? There's certainly no my age care in these villages of Europe, right? And home care package. She goes, Jim, there's always a local person in the village that would keep an eye out for the oldie, right? Help him, keep an eye out. And I just thought, I had this moment, like it was just like this flash into my mind. I was like, if only I was a better village local for Lillian. And that's how we got our name, Village Local.
Oh, interesting.
Right. So that's like, ever since then, I was just constantly thinking to myself, well, what could I have done differently, and what could society be doing differently to keep our older generations, helping them maintain the level of independence that they want.
So you've got another job and then you do this on the side?
No, this is a full-time exercise now. So for a few years, yes,
So how does it bring you income?
The beautiful thing about the aged care industry is there are so many organisations, businesses, communities that are willing to support the initiative. So it was quite easy. Once I figured out how to do it, it was quite easy just to go to any organisation that believed in the work that we do to say, hey guys, like, if you believe in the work that we do, and that is to provide a voice for older people, helping them navigate, then support us in doing that. Sponsor us to do the work that we do, so that we can have these conversations and keep the lights on. And
so do you get a government grant or anything?
we get no government grants. Ever since
Really?
ever since I started this, right, I've had a queue of people come to me to say, hey, Jim, Village Local, we're an organisation that helps organisations like yours access government funding, government grants, this, that and the other. We can do that for you. There are so many government grants that can support you. And I've always said no to them, right? There is so much money out there to do the work that we do, and I've always said no to them. And the reason why I've said no is because a government grant is like a leaf in the wind. It's there and then it's gone, and it's there and it's gone, right? And I've seen so many organisations. This is not an attack on organisations that take government grants or anything like that. It's certainly not. Government grants are wonderful for the right.
That sounds like the way some of our aged recipients of packages feel. They want to stay a distance from the government.
Well, let me explain my rationale, and then you'll sort of get, because in some way I am taking a government grant because I work in a lot of the organisations that support us. They're getting government grants. So without their government grants, they wouldn't be supporting us, right? So it's in some convoluted way. Village Local exists because government. Yeah, I'm not directly taking it, right? So I've always said, no, look, we need to come up with a more sustainable way that we can stay true to our mission, which is to keep older people living independently and well in their homes and communities for as long as possible. We need to come up with a way to stay true to that mission and not have to keep shifting our mission because we need to shift it so it meets the criteria to win a grant. I've just seen so many organisations shift their mission because the current grant that was funding them
Is restricted.
It has changed, and the new grant that's now in place, the wording of it's slightly changed, so they've got to change their whole mission. Like I don't want to play that game. So I've just sort of come up with it more of a traditional kind of, hey, believe in the work that we do, support us, support us to do it, right?
But what you're doing is wonderful because look at all the people who have questions or are very confused, and they're able to put their hand up and get others with the experience to help them.
Well, yeah, exactly right. I pinch myself. On most days, I get emails from people. My team get emails from people thanking us for the work that we're doing, right? And I look at the numbers. I look at the we've got internally, we call what we do the CarePath program. We've internally calling it the CarePath program. We help people along that CarePath journey, right? So we call it the CarePath program. And they're
almost like an OPAD, but with OPAD, it might take 6 weeks to get an answer.
Right.
With your system, within an hour, people are getting help.
That's awesome. I look at it and I think about people, putting questions out into the ether, and whether it's the community that's answering the questions or or it's one of our Village Local team members that are getting in there to round out the answer. It's so cool how it all works. But I also see, like, how did we go from a 34-year-old person that knew nothing about aged care 5 years ago? I knew nothing about it. I knew a lot about health technology and different diseases. I knew nothing about aged care. How did we go from that to helping over 19,000 people now who are going through the CarePath program as we've structured it?
Well, you're just like the aged people, learn as we go.
We're doing it together. And the point of these conversations, right, and we call them CarePath conversations, which we share with the community, is to share knowledge, right?
Yeah.
The knowledge exists, and there are people
that's the problem.
There
By sharing it, we're getting out to the people the help that's there that the government doesn't tell us about.
Exactly right. And I don't think it's the government not wanting to say it. I mean, there was a wonderful 2-hour webinar, and I thought, there's going to be a lot of people that hear that sentence that would cringe. That is not a wonderful thing. But the government invested in a 2-hour webinar on the 7th of December that communicated, this is what we're doing in the aged care system. This is what's coming up in the next 12 to 18 months. So the government is doing what they can, the best way they know how to. I've noticed that the policies that are coming out, all they're doing, they're not changing the value. They're not changing the cost of the aged care system. All these policies are doing is it's prompting the consumer to go, hang on a second, what's going on here? Let me take a moment to understand this.
It's making the consumer aware.
It's making the consumer aware. And the consumer can make their own choice, once they've got the awareness. So the government's not, changing the cost of aged care, right? Or the value proposition. All the government's doing is it's creating policies that prompts the consumer to ask themselves the question, are you getting a good deal? And if not, can you get a better deal?
Yeah.
Right? And that's all the government's doing. Which you can get those better deals right now without any of these policies. Right? But it goes down to the fact that, are you a consumer that will advocate for your consumer rights and your needs, just like you are, just like Trevor is in the community group, and there's others in the community group as well. We've been on this call for over an hour, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. This conversation, and
it's a big topic.
It's a huge. Hey, I could talk to you for hours, right? And we might even reconnect to discuss some other stuff. But what you're doing is what the community needs far more people doing. You're spreading the word.
Yeah. Well, same as you, trying to help people.
We are certainly the work that you're doing in speaking to your friends and getting on this conversation. You're going to be.
I helped 2 people this morning before your call.
So you helped 2 people this morning. It's really, really exciting, the impact that a platform like Village Local, and there are other wonderful platforms out there, right? Where if we can just share our knowledge, put it out through these platforms, the impact that we can have. I think people underestimate the impact that they can be having in a community. So don't think your contribution.
Each one of them can help a neighbour as well. That doubles it straight away.
Absolutely. So every person hearing this, I put the challenge to you. If you learn something from this conversation, go and share it with just pay it forward, but just don't have to do anything big. Pay it forward to one person. Just one person, and that will double the impact. Let's leave it at that.
I am so grateful. You've got no idea. We really are in a lucky country.
We are in a lucky country, and let me just end by saying we have got a wonderful aged care system in this country. It is not perfect. It is absolutely not perfect. Nothing in life ever is. But it is wonderful, and the people who get the most out of it are those who understand how it works. So let's stop relying on others and let's do it ourselves. On that note, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to try and help you spread the word. And thanks, Jim, for ringing.
See ya. My pleasure. Bye-bye.
Bye.